What is going on? It is Nate the Game Guy coming back with another video at hand, and today I want to talk to you guys about some of the most difficult game consoles to collect for. These are all game consoles that I have tried to collect for at some point before in the past, some of which I've been successful with, other times I have not been successful with, but the point of the matter is I have had some experience in trying to collect for these consoles. Now in this video, I'm not going to rank these consoles in any way, shape, or form, which one is the easiest to the hardest or from the hardest to the easiest. These are just game consoles that are just difficult to collect for, whether it is pricing, availability, trying to hunt down one that is in good shape along with games that are in good shape. It could be a host of many different reasons. But the point of the matter is, these are not consoles that are easy to collect for. So without further ado, let's jump right into this video's topic. Take a look at some really hard to collect for game consoles right after the intro. So I'm going to start things off with this video by talking about the Sega Saturn. The Sega Saturn is easily one of the most difficult game consoles to collect for, not just with pricing, but also trying to get a good copy of a game. For example, if you try to get a game such as this, a lot of times you will notice when trying to look for them online or in game stores or whatever the matter may be, these cases are very prone to cracking, and these are not easy cases to replace. Of course, there have been replacement cases that you can buy online, and I do have to say as well, another thing that you got to worry about with collecting for the Sega Saturn is disc rot. Unfortunately, disc rot is a real issue when it comes to Sega Saturn, but not just with Sega Saturn, but with like GameCube, Sega CD, along with a few other consoles as well. Essentially what it is essentially when the disc kind of begins to break down, either because of poor manufacturing, the climate that it's been in, whether it's hot or humid or whatever. I'm not going to go in depth with disc rot in this video because I already have a video all about disc rot that you guys can check out. I really do recommend that you guys do give it a watch, is because I do go into quite a bit of detail when it comes to disc rot. But I do have to say that is a real issue when it comes to Sega Saturn. One of my tips that I want to give when it comes to collecting for Sega Saturn is make sure that you buy Sega Saturn games from places where if for whatever reason you just don't like it, you can return it, no questions asked. I would recommend checking out like an eBay seller that has that type of return policy, or a game store, so that way you can inspect it, make sure that the disc looks all fine and pretty, and if it doesn't look that great, just return it, no questions asked. Of course, it is worth mentioning talking about the pricing with Sega Saturn, because this is not a cheap game console to collect for. A lot of the best games to collect for with Sega Saturn can easily be several $100s. But I will say, with Sega Saturn, it is not the most expensive game console to collect for. Although it is arguably one of them, I will go into some really expensive game consoles later down in this video, so be sure to check that out. But I will say, starting things off, Saturn is not an easy console to collect for, and if you're talking about hard to collect for game consoles, Saturn is definitely one of them that comes to my mind. Of course, since I already talked about Saturn, it is worth mentioning talking about Sega CD. This is easily another game console that is hard to collect for, although you can make the argument that it is just a plain accessory for Genesis, but whatever you want to call it, it is very difficult to collect for the Sega CD. Of course, it does come with a lot of the same issues that the Sega Saturn has. Disc rot, cases that are pretty difficult to find in good shape. You know, if you are worried about this, sometimes that depending on whether the previous owner kept it, whether it was like vertical or horizontal, sometimes the booklets can have a little bit of some creasing in there. Me personally, that isn't something that bothers me, but if you are somebody that really doesn't like creasing and wants to have everything in super mint condition, good luck trying to find a mint condition copy for both Sega CD and Sega Saturn. Of course, it is also worth talking about the Sega CD did sell less units than the Sega Saturn, which of course affected its sales of games overall. So that even makes things more rare and more difficult to find for the Sega CD. But I won't really talk too much about Sega CD because a lot of the same issues with Sega CD or on the Sega Saturn, except things are a little bit more rarer to find. And of course, since it's more rarer to find, it is not more expensive, but I would say it's about the same price range as Sega Saturn. But overall, I will say Sega CD is arguably a lot, maybe not a lot more, but a little bit more difficult to collect for than Sega Saturn, with a lot of the same issues that came with the Saturn. Now, one game console I would absolutely would love to add to my game collection is the Neo Geo AES. The Neo Geo AES is what introduced Metal Slug and Fatal Fury, King of Fighters, to the home for gamers to play outside of the arcade. Now, unfortunately, what makes this game console more difficult to collect for is the fact it is just so darn expensive. If you think Sega Saturn is expensive, you clearly have not heard of Neo Geo AES. Most of the games are several $100s, and I would argue that also like half of the library is about several $1,000s complete in box. For the price of these games, you could get somebody their first car to drive with how expensive these games are. I would love to grab me a Neo Geo AES sometime, get some Fatal Fury, play some of the old school Metal Slug games on the original hardware meant for home entertainment and all that wonderful stuff outside of the arcade. But with prices the way they are, I don't know about you guys, but I can't afford to spend several $1,000s per game for a game console. It is just out of the question. No way I can afford that. But I will say that is one expensive game console to collect for if you're wanting to talk about difficulty due to finances. Now, being the only handheld game console on this list is Tiger's Gizmondo. Back when this failed handheld was a thing, back during the 2000s, it only had 7 games released for the entire console's lifespan. I'm sure you can imagine, with a handheld that only came out with 7 games while it was a thing, this thing did not find much success at all. Now, of course, being the game collector that I am, this is something that I would love to add to my game collection at some point, because I do enjoy the cool and obscure and failed game consoles. I just think that they're a really interesting add to the game room. Now, what makes this handheld really difficult to collect for is that it's pretty rare to find listings that are North American listings on eBay for the console itself. And when you do find games for this handheld, they'll easily go up several $100s for a complete in-box copy online. And I can truthfully tell you, after seeing some gameplay footage of some of these games, such as Sticky Balls, they are not worth the prices at all. You are only paying the prices because they are essentially collector's items. But if you're looking for fun things to do and fun games to play, yeah, you better take your money somewhere else, because these games do not offer anything that is worth several $100s in terms of what these games have to offer. But yes, that is a handheld and a game console that is really difficult to find, not only because of pricing, but also just how rare it is to find these games available, just overall. Now, I'm sure this game console will come to no surprise at all to a lot of you guys that I'm mentioning this as one of the most difficult game consoles to collect for, and that is the Apple Bandai Pippin. Believe it or not, there was a time when Apple and Bandai worked together to create a game console known as the Apple Bandai Pippin. It was released in Japan and in North America, and this is a game console that when I first discovered about it, this was something I really wanted to add to the game collection and the game room. Now, unfortunately, what makes this game console difficult to collect for is the fact that it's very hard to even find a North American Apple Bandai Pippin. When going on eBay, I can find Japanese Pippins all day, no questions asked. I can find them just without any trouble at all. But the very second I try to look for a North American Apple Bandai Pippin, yeah, good luck trying to find one of those. I've looked for them for years and I cannot find them online. So if you find one of them, hey, let me know, because I would love to add one to the game room. So I'm just thinking, if this is something that I can't even find at all for North America, oh boy, I do not want to imagine how much the pricing is for one of those things. But yeah, if you're wanting to talk about hard to collect for game consoles, yeah, Apple Bandai Pippin, yeah, I'm looking at you with being a hard to find game console overall. Alright, and that'll conclude my video for some of the most difficult game consoles to collect for. What do you guys think? Are there any game consoles that you think are hard to collect for? Or are there any game consoles that I mentioned that you would love to add to your game room or game collection? Feel free to comment in the comment section down below. I would love to hear from you guys, see what you guys have to say. Of course, do consider giving this video a like. It helps boost it up into the YouTube algorithm so more viewers such as you can find videos just like this. Of course, please do consider subscribing, because I post a ton of content when it comes to game collecting tips, and other video game related subjects. So if that is something that interests you guys, please do consider subscribing. But if you're going to subscribe, don't forget to hit that bell notification button, so that way you will be notified when I upload a video just like this. I hope you guys did enjoy the video, and I'll be seeing you guys next time.